It's come through. Yeah, yeah.
Hi,
Hi, Vaishnavi.
Zareen.
Hi,
How are you? Good to
I'm
see
fine.
you.
Yeah, good to see you too.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining, and I'm really to the session.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So,
This looks like, sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Zareen.
so are they as per schedule? I mean, in terms of timings, or it's the
Yeah, so they should be, we have about, I think, 6 minutes to go, right, Zareen?
yeah.
Yeah, so we will start, on time as we should. And if you want, you can, we can wait for about 4 minutes with, with the camera off or whatever, and we'll wait for somebody to come in, perhaps the MC to give us a cue, and then I'll kick it off by giving the context, setting the context, and then jumping right in to the the Q&A we've agreed. So it's really about you, your journey, and it's about just inspiring people who are there to think about how things get done. And it's interesting to see how everybody has their own sort of unique angle to this, right? I was talking to a woman entrepreneur recently, and she's like, why does there have to be a woman? Like, I'm just an entrepreneur, and treat me as an entrepreneur. So it's those sorts of things which are very helpful for others also to hear that there are others who've kind of accomplished a lot, and they face the same issues we faced, which they are facing. So those sorts of things for people to get comfortable with the journey and the challenges, so that they don't think they're not conquerable. And yeah, and of course all the stuff around ESG, which is so important, which I'm sure you deal with every day. It's becoming so critical, and the sort of right at the center of what we are doing on
Yeah.
all elements. So yeah, I see Tamanna and Vandana is here. Vandana Zareen is our she's the master of ceremonies of the event today. Hi Vandana, good to see you back
Hi,
again.
hi,
Hi,
Vandana.
Vaishali. Hi, Zareen. How are you?
Hi, I'm fine.
Great.
Hi,
Okay.
Zareen. Good to
Hi,
connect.
hi.
Hi Tamanna. And so are we live? So we should be careful about what we are saying, or will you give us a little bit of a heads up?
I think there's a technical glitch, which means we are live. So I think we should. I mean, we can just
We are
chat
live.
amongst us, but we are live.
Okay, so should we wait for another 2 minutes, or
Yeah,
just
I
4
think we
minutes?
can put off our cameras and then we can get
Yeah.
started. Does that work?
Okay, and you will take the lead and hand it over to
Yes.
me, and then I will take
Yes.
it on from there. Okay, so
Absolutely.
we have about 3 minutes. We'll switch on our
Yes.
cameras in 3 minutes.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good afternoon from India, and good morning or good afternoon or good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining us. My name is Vandana Saxena-Boria, and I'm the Master of Ceremonies on this, the 5th GES Summit. A very, very warm welcome to everyone, and we're delighted that we've got Vaishali Sinha with us. Now, Vaishali is no stranger to this network, and she's been so heavily involved with this work for many, many years, and such a great support as the chair of the UN GCNI for GES 2022. She's also the chair of the Renew Foundation and the Chief Sustainability Officer of Renew Power. I won't give you the long introduction. She's got a massive introduction. I'd rather save the time for the conversation that's going to happen today. So Vaishali, without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to you.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much, Vandana. And it is an absolute pleasure today for me to be in conversation with Zareen Daruwala. I think Zareen needs no introduction for any woman interested in finance, I would say in India for sure, if not in other parts of the world as well. She is well known as an assuming, sharp, and a firebrand leader in the sector. Zareen, it is such a pleasure to have you here with us, in conversation with us. You know, as you have a pretty big job of leading a financial institution, not only in India, but in the South Asian cluster as well. So, you know, thank you so much for joining us here. I am delighted to, you know, kind of be here in conversation with you, really to bring out not only specifics around ESG, but your journey in particular, because I think that is one thing we're trying to do here, to inspire women to spread and stretch themselves beyond what they think they can. And sometimes inadvertently, you know, we just believe that we have limits. And when we stay focused and we do what we've got to do most competently, then we end up stretching ourselves. I think you personify that. I am not going to introduce you via your CV. I'm introducing you because of the reasons I thought you would be an apt spotlight speaker today. It is exactly for these reasons: most unassuming, most dynamic, firebrand leader in this sector. And in our topic, the topic we are going to talk about, I think financial institutions are going to play a super critical role in ensuring that they not only engage women, but they fund projects around entrepreneurship and, you know, make sure that women are a part of this journey, which we have embarked upon, whether it is 2030, whether it is 2050, whether it's 2070. The only thing I know is time is short and we must take action. And we need leaders like you to inspire our young leaders out there. More importantly, even the men and the boys out there, to see that what there is to do with respect to engaging women. And if we don't include them, what is it that we're missing out on? So we have a pretty diverse set of folks who've registered, and we are going to be amplifying this conversation across various social media channels. So, you know, I think we hope to have impact around this topic, which is breaking stereotypes, leadership in mitigating climate risk. Just to give some context, you know, we all know that climate change is a real issue in hand and has huge amounts of socioeconomic, you know, I guess, perils if it's not addressed over the next few decades. But even by the end of this decade, if we do not take action, a steep sort of trajectory of action, you know, we are all in for some trouble. So we also know that women have been at the forefront of being the at the negative end of climate change. And we really have to ensure that as they go through whatever experience they're going through, we take them on the table to ensure that they have a say in policy making, they have a say in assigning funds, allocating funds, because they understand the problem better than various other stakeholders do. And we do not see adequate amount of representation with respect to women, either in institutions, at the in the policy making and leadership. So we need to do more, and we'll probably bring out some ideas in this conversation as to how is it that we can do it. So without much ado, if I could pose my first question to you, Zareen, as a corporate leader in one of the leading financial institutions in the world, can you give us, take us through your journey? What is it that shaped your leadership style? And, what are the challenges you faced or perhaps didn't? Because there are both sides to it, and it's not necessary everybody did. So over to you to just share your sort of experiences over the last few years of being in business with us.
Thanks, Vaishali. So I would say ICICI Bank, where I started my journey in 1989, has been a factory of producing leaders. I think even today there would be 20 to 25 CEOs from ICICI Bank, ex-ICICI Bank, who are in the financial services business as CEOs. So that's the kind of, it's like the Unilever for the FMCG business. So I would say I was very fortunate to have leaders with whom I worked very closely. My first boss was Lalita Gupte, a lady who went on to become the joint managing director of ICICI Bank. Her leadership style was a lot of empathy, would be tough yet very gentle when it needed to be. I happened to work very closely with Mr. Wagul, who became Bank of India chairman at the young age of 40, a record not yet broken in the public sector. Yes. And he had a huge humility about his leadership style, and a brilliant visionary and an institutional builder. And Mr. Kamath, who we all used to get very scared of, and who again was a very, very big visionary, and who sort of, I think, revolutionized the whole retail banking. So till Mr. Kamath took the initiative of launching debit card, credit card, ATM, internet banking, all those things were ICICI was a pioneer, literally, in that space. So I was very fortunate to have worked with all these people. And I would say I really imbibed a lot of the good qualities of each of the leader, or I tried to emulate. I can't say I'm as good as them, but really tried to emulate. So when I joined Standard Chartered, I think some of these qualities really helped because when I joined Standard Chartered, it was a loss-making bank in India, not globally. And I had to turn around the franchise. Last year, we were the third most profitable franchise in the Standard Chartered network. And I think for that, the leadership style has to change depending on the situation. So when I joined, I had to be a little bit no nonsense and not tolerant of mediocrity. Over time, things changed, and I think your leadership style also sort of needs to be listening to the voice of frontline, to know what is going wrong, have a connect, be very hands-on when things are not doing well, and back off, if you don't need to be spending more time if something is functioning well. So a lot of change had to do with my leadership style. And I would say the last 2 years were a real test of leadership, because there's a huge human element involved. And how do you manage business while being very empathetic to people's needs? Last year in April to June, I would say I spent 80 to 90% of my time just on the well-being of employees and ensuring that people are safe. Safety and well-being came first and business came second. So yeah, it's evolved and I think it keeps changing as the situation changes.
Thanks, Zareen. Very interesting. I see when you gave examples from ICICI, it was about professionals. They happen to be men or women. And you imbibed the best of their professional, I would say, characteristics, subconsciously or consciously, to become who you are. And that says a lot about the leaders you see. And I also observe in leaders They see themselves as leaders and professionals, and they're focused on the competency and the effectiveness. And the gender comes later on, if not at all. And perhaps that's great. I'm not saying that we shouldn't give attention to make the workplace more inclusive, more fair, and we must continue our efforts to change that, because a lot needs to be done. Not everybody is as self-driven, so we must think about people who may feel a little intimidated, may feel that they need more support, and we must make it easier for them to do better at work. But it is also heartening to see that when we do our job well, at some point, people don't really see you as a male or a female at the workplace. They see you as a competent professional. And I hope everybody listening here makes a note of that. And I've met all the people you talked about, Zareen, and I must say I have also been very inspired by them, because, you know, in the 90s, they were like names to reckon with, all of them. So you're really blessed, I think, to have, had the experience of their presence at the workplace around you. This brings me to the next topic, which I wanted to discuss with you, Zareen, that from where we sit, which is a little bit in the infrastructure place, though it's a new era, renewable energy space, but we still see and find it very difficult to ensure that there is, equity at the workplace with respect to, where I use the word equity deliberately, and equality in terms of also male and women, just in terms of numbers. It's not fair at all, as we see the data and the statistics. However, when we look at the financial services, we look up to that sector as, wow, how do they do it? And we wish we could get there. But my question to you is that, do you see that there is a glass ceiling in the banking sector for women or not? And of course, I'm not talking about exceptions, but generally speaking, and why, and how can other sectors also learn from that?
Yeah, I think banking sector has been in India particularly blessed with a lot of women leaders. We've had the largest bank, State Bank of India, having Arundhati Bhattacharya, and we've had a lot of public sector banks with women CEO, whether it's Bank of India. We've seen many banks, Indian Bank, many of these nationalized banks. And of course, we've seen ICICI Bank, Axis Bank, etc. also. So to that extent, I would say the banking sector has been having a fairly decent proportion of women CEOs. I would say women do much better when it comes to services sector. You would see even, a software company, etc. We've seen Capgemini, Accenture, or many of these software companies also having women CEOs. And to my mind, it's easier for a woman to function in a work office kind of environment than be on the shop floor. It's a tougher environment. And that's why you see women doing well in the services side. In fact, financial sector has an average of nearly 30% female diversity, which can still be better. But I would say, again, within banking also, you'll see certain job families having more women and certain job families not having more women. So, where it's relationship management, customer facing, sales, we see a good number, but in certain job families, we don't see that. I would say that the Oliver Wyman report on women representation in BFSI found that most business had low representation, but certain functions had greater representation, and what they call the problem of saturation, where you have asymmetry even in banks. And that's what I was talking about, that certain roles actually have more women. So frontline relationship manager, we have 45% women, maybe 50%. So you see that a little bit difference happening. But I would say that in terms of now coming to what do banks do, which sort of helps us retain talent, I would say our bank or even ICICI Bank where I worked, there was a lot of sensitivity about a woman. If a woman wanted a 1 year break, they would say, okay, you take a break and come back. In our bank, we have creche, 3 locations, Bombay, Delhi. We have creche for women to bring their babies up to 5 years old. Kids we keep. So there are a lot of enabling things that banks and financial institutions have done, and that really helps to ensure that a woman doesn't take a career break when she gets into, being a mother or having a family, struggling with managing both family and office front. Also, I would say that there's been a lot of awareness within the institution also on diversity, the need to have, for the men also, we kind of undertake sessions how to create the workplace as a women-friendly workplace. All these measures are really helpful in retaining talent. And I would say that in ICICI, for example, they never hired laterally a lot of the women. They actually hired at the entry level and then ensured that they retained a lot of the women. And that's why you see a lot of women senior colleagues there. And to my mind, that's very important. How do you nurture at the very initial stage? And how do you help them in that middle stage where they are vulnerable because of managing both home and office pressure? And that has really helped to groom female talent.
Well said, Zareen. Well said. And I think your comment, which really resonates with me, is how do we make sure that we provide the support for men also to do more with respect to this sort of life cycle women go through, where they really need to, tap a lot on their physical self, their, ecosystem as far as family care is concerned. And how do we engage men to share that? And what is it that organizations can do? Because my firm belief is, Zareen, and I hope you agree, that unless we get men to step it up a little bit on the home front as partners, I mean, whoever the partner is, the partners as we build our families, because I'm of the firm belief that family is a very important institution for us to have a better world. And there is absolutely no doubt. But I think the burden lies on women way more than they can take, given that they're also stepping out in this world. And I do believe that we must support women, but we must engage and incentivize men to share the burden so that, I think bosses at work or others at work don't resent this. I think there's an understated in the closet sort of support on the outside, but, this understated and not stated, actually, not understated, not stated concern, which does exist, that women are going to become unavailable during a certain time, and that really impacts their careers in a not a positive way, especially for a very ambitious women. So we must get men perhaps to do more, and I think organizations need to support. I think families need to support, because it's great to be a part of one institution for a long period of time, and that's wonderful. That's so comfortable. But as you may have seen yourself, when you change from a comfort zone like an ICICI to Standard Chartered, you really have to put in, double up your effort to adjust and to, kind of step it up. And women must do that to grow, right? Sometimes you can grow in an organization and other times you can't. So these are the sort of subtleties, I think, which require attention, and sometimes policies cannot address this. And it is a state of mind and it's a culture which will hopefully address these issues. So that's where we all have to act at an individual level as well, at home, at the workplace, as colleagues, etc. Now that brings me to things which we can do from a policy perspective. There's certain things which are mindset issues and cultural issues, but certain things are clearly policy driven. Now, if we look at policy and you look at the requirements of women directors, independent directors on board, we have seen that a single regulatory change has had a significant impact on how women can get engaged at the top end of organizations to bring about impact, to play a role, and to get their voice heard and to contribute in a big way. Since the regulation, the number of women independent board directors have gone up fourfold, right? Which is not an insignificant amount. And that's the kind of regulation action being taken by institutions and the impact we see in terms of engaging women. To me, it seems like there is an example. We can do this on other fronts as well. So from a policy perspective in India, do you have like any policy interventions you would like to put on the table, which we can put together in the form of a report and share with policymakers, which will help us make the workplace, definitely in the private sector or broadly speaking, more diverse and inclusive? And perhaps women would also benefit from that in a big way. Any policy interventions you have in mind, Zareen?
No, I can't often think of policy interventions, but I would agree with you on the fact that I think women directors really sort of has been, the mandatory requirement has been really good. And it has ensured that there's diversity on boards. If you look at it started with Norway 2003, when Norway mandated 40% of the board should be women. And then we have California. Now even states, not only countries, have started mandating, where California said that companies incorporated in California need to have diversity, and otherwise there's a fine. So I would say that's good in a way, as a good starting point. And I would like to quote Christine Lagarde, who said in a blog that if women had been in charge of the investment bank, then perhaps if the bank was named Lehman Sisters, the event may have been avoided, and went on to suggest that an increase in females in the financial industry would minimize reckless decision making. So I would say that this is quite a telling statement from her. And I don't think we should look at it more as a quota filling, but look at it on a meritocracy kind of principles, where I personally feel that women add a lot of value. If a company is making automobiles and you don't have a perspective of a woman, then you're sort of in a way disregarding all the female drivers in the world when you're designing your automobile or any product, any FMCG product, etc. So to my mind, that's a really important thing. Women have certain skill sets which they bring a different perspective on the table, and that perspective perhaps may not necessarily be there if there's no diversity in the boardroom. In fact, you mentioned about the increase in female directors. In fact, when 2013, when this was introduced, only 61% had no women on the board. That is quite a lot of the Nifty companies, Nifty 500, 300 didn't have. And then, of course, the good thing that has happened is a lot of them have appointed, and not necessarily their relatives, but actually professional women. The other good thing that has happened in India is there's no golden skirt phenomena, which means that, the same women are sort of chased to be on many, many boards. There's been quite a wide ranging set of women who've come on the board, and perhaps on their own merit, which is an extremely good outcome to my mind, which has happened. So I would say it's been a very, very good sort of change that we are seeing. And I would say that we'll soon see not one, but maybe 2 or 3 women now. That will be the new trend that we will see on corporate boards, which will be a very, very healthy thing. And we're already seeing that. A lot of the companies now have 2 women, not even 1. So it's not a tick box item, but they genuinely believe that women are adding value.
Absolutely, Zareen, very well said. And, honestly, it's important for us to also be able to, measure some of these things which we are talking about. And how we do that definitely has an impact. When investors ask the right questions around ESG, around D&I, around human rights, around supply chain issues, and how green they are, how just they are, companies and financial institutions all take action. And towards that extent, we have seen that financial institutions are really going to play a very critical role in this decade of action, where environment, social governance is becoming the center of everything we do. I don't think companies and institutions have invested so much in an area in the recent past as they are in this critical area. Could you share a little bit about the tools, products, Standard Chartered is, developing to address issues around climate change. Perhaps some of your initiatives also, which are centered around these issues, that would be great.
Sure. So in October 2021, Standard Chartered announced fairly ambitious targets to reach net zero carbon emissions from our finance activity. So all the companies that we have, that's quite ambitious by 2050. And we have interim 2030 targets for the most carbon intensive sectors. So as a bank, we few years back said that we will not fund coal-based power plants or anything that sort of involves fossil fuels. So that was something that we had decided a few years back, but now it's been a little more ambitious. And why I say ambitious is because Standard Chartered Bank, it has a large footprint in emerging markets, and 33 of our 59 footprint markets do not have a commitment to reach net zero. So to that extent, it becomes more onerous for us as a bank anyway. Our net zero approach has three aims. One is, as I said, to reduce the carbon emission from our financing activities. But what we are saying is we will have a plan to mobilize $300 billion in green and transition finance for our customers. And also what we are doing is we have created a transition acceleration team to support our clients. So it's more about handholding clients through the journey of energy transition, guiding them, advising them, and sort of helping them with opportunities of how to do that, including engaging with external rating agencies on ESG ratings. So some of our large groups in India, we're actually helping them with the ESG ratings also. So that is as far as handholding clients concerned. What we've done is we've launched a carbon credit exchange in partnership with Singapore Exchange and Temasek last year. And it aims to be a global exchange and marketplace for high quality carbon credits. So in November last year, they did a pilot auction of the high quality carbon credits curated portfolio. And it has cleared 170,000 tons of carbon credit from 8 natural climate solution projects. So this is a pilot which is done, and it's the first of its kind in the global voluntary carbon. This is a voluntary carbon market. So now the idea is that how do we scale this up? And we are also sort of quite keen that this kind of thing comes to India also, because India also has been having a roadmap for energy transition, etc. So we hope that a similar thing, what we did in Singapore, we can emulate it in India also.
Great, that's fantastic. Very pioneering, Zareen. And, as we share this conversation, I hope corporates and various other policymakers kind of listen to this, and we can definitely bring this program to India. I think different ways in, available for us to contribute. It's great to see institutions like yourselves are assisting companies in their sort of in their journey to kind of participate in various programs for disclosures and frameworks, etc. Especially MSMEs, sometimes they feel quite lost because the larger organizations have access to resources, they don't. And I think that's an area where programs like this or the kind of advice like this would be of great value. And to the extent you do work in rural India, I'm sure there is a plan. Even there is opportunity for us to ensure we are helping people transition in different ways. And, you talked about your engagement on the social front also, and that will be another conversation, I think, because you're doing great work around, I think, addressing the issue of blindness, correct? And so that's, as I said, is for another conversation, given we have 2 minutes left. One thing before I conclude, I wanted to ask you, you look so cool, you look so calm. It's just so difficult when you said, at Standard Chartered, I had to become this person who meant business. When I look at a person, it's of a different, somebody who looks like really stern with, but you maintain this very calm demeanor. What is I'm sure there is a stress buster. which makes you look so calm? I mean, is it yoga? Is it meditation? What is it, Zareen?
It's yoga, actually. I've been quite religious about doing yoga, and I've been doing it for 8-9 years now. So I think it helps me just in many ways, mentally and physically. I feel good after doing it. So I've continued doing it.
Okay, so if you want to be like Zareen and get to where she does, let's do yoga. I wish it was so simple, but no, that's an amazing quality to have, especially when you have to do so much. One last question to you, and this is kind of a rapid fire, just to get to know you a little better. If you were to go back, I guess perhaps maybe 30 odd years, maybe a little bit more than that, and start all over again, would you do exactly the same things, or did you aspire to be an artist or a musician or something totally different?
So if I was to start my career today, I would prefer to be a computer engineer or a computer science student and be in the tech world, because I think the next 2 or 3 decades will be dominated by that space. So, yeah.
And so what roles, just as you mentioned, roles, right? It's not about the area. So what role would you like to be on the programming side, on the entrepreneurship? What do you think would excite you?
I want to be an entrepreneur.
Okay, great. I like to hear that. I like to hear more women talking about entrepreneurship, Zareen, and it's never too late. So, so yes, and absolutely, we've seen entrepreneurs at 60 plus nowadays. So it's never too late. But what you're doing is incredible. It's amazing. And more power to you, Zareen. And we really appreciate you taking out time and sharing your very simple and crystal clear views with all of us here. It's been an absolute pleasure learning a little bit about you in an informal way. Thank you for being in our spotlight session today, Zareen.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you.
Thank you so much to both Vaishali and Zareen for such a fantastic conversation with really great questions. So just highlighting a couple of the key points that Zareen said: find role models and mentors around you. Try and absorb as much as you can from them. The banking industry has really given us, the Indian banking industry has given us almost a role model to go, or a pathway to go down. Nurture at the initial stages and be there at the mid-levels. Let's build up more male allies. Let's have them as partners, not just in the office, but also at home. As Lagarde said, if it had been Lehman Sisters, the chances are it would still be going today. Let's get more women on boards. There's evidence that that's a sensible thing to do. So let's try and get 2 to 3 at least on every board, and take stands. In the last conversation before lunch, we talked about the elephants, i.e. the really large companies are the ones that have to show the way forward. Standard Chartered is doing that with the net zero from finance. And moving towards that for 2050, not funding fossil fuels, doing these pilots. And lastly, yoga is the way to keep calm. So thank you so much, Zareen and Vaishali. Fantastic session. We're now going to go to a different room and do the next spotlight session. Zareen, thank you. And we hope you're going to get a chance to stay for some of the rest of the summit. We really appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Everyone
Thanks,
else,
Zareen.
see you
Bye-bye.
in the other room. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Zareen.
Bye.
Thanks, Vandana.